This is the Final Word Daily, the England-India Daily for the last time for this Test series, the first Anderson Tendulkar Trophy, much to our chagrin, but the result was not. Geoff Lemon with you, Daniel Norcross with me, who's done a power of work summing up various matches, days, etc. over the course of this series. The show is brought to you by Noobru, the Think Drink, which Daniel may have been quaffing to keep his brain alert. But given we've done days, given we've done matches, let's do an entire series in the space of 30 seconds.
For once, a test series between England and India ended with the correct result, by which I mean it should probably have been a draw, and it was a draw. There were moments when it looked like England were going to win it, and quite convincingly, which wouldn't have been a fair reflection. There were moments when India managed to lose the unlosable game, but England turned that round to make sure that they lost the unlosable game. And also, it was an unwinnable game at one point as well. So they managed to do both in one game, which was really impressive. We saw injury, we saw heartbreak, and we saw the very, very best of a 5-test series. And what we also saw was 25 long, bloody days. And kind of literally bloody as well. By the end of it, people were just retreating as if at the end of a very long war with a lot of bandages and a lot of crutches. And it was bloody good fun.
I think that's a pretty fair summary. And it was, I mean, if I were Hall of Faming something right now, it would be getting 25 days of Test cricket, you know, and there was some rain, but there weren't sort of days that were largely washed away. There was session. There might have been a session, a couple of hours here or there, scattered amongst it, and there were abysmally slow over rates, which meant that you didn't, the number of days didn't equal the number of days that it might have equaled in a different decade of Test cricket, for instance.
But it did equal a lot of overs in the end. Andy Zoltzman crunched various numbers. I think England bowled more overs than they had in any 5-test series in yonks. I mean, obviously, when you go back to timeless Test matches and whatnot, they bowled more overs and people scored fewer runs off them. But Jamie Smith was out there keeping wicket for much, much longer than a human being should be expected to do, especially one who's actually a batter rather than a wicketkeeper. The bowlers bowled more overs than they were supposed to, none more so than the great Mohammad Siraj, who managed somehow to be at his very best right at the very end, which was a feat of extraordinary endurance, while others were sort of falling by the wayside. The one other person who'd made it all the way through from the bowling department had his arm in a sling out there in the middle. So it was kind of like the contrast between these two kind of titans in their different ways. Siraj had a much bigger impact on the series, of course. But yeah, I mean, we were lucky with weather. I don't think we were blessed with good pitches. I mean, everyone got very excited about the series for a number of very good reasons, because close games are great. And I think another Andy Zoltzman stat was, about the number of games where the deficit in first innings was only 30 runs or under.
Yes.
Which is very
3 of
unusual.
the 5, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yes, it was similar to the Ashes back in 2023. So it gave this wonderful feeling that no side had really pulled ahead. I mean, at Old Trafford, England pulled miles ahead, just as they did actually in the Ashes of 2023, but were defeated this time not by rain, but by not possibly the right team selection and definitely the worst pitch of the lot. I mean, what was a little concerning for fans of fun cricket is that the very best fun cricket was the Oval, without a doubt. They got it spot on. They poured loads of water on it, grew loads of grass, meant that you had 2 days where the bowlers at last got some reward, which is where I think actually England tripped up, because they should have been saving the likes of Archer and Carrs for that last test and saving them from Old Trafford, because getting a result on that wicket is near on impossible. But I thought the other pitches were quite slow and turgid. I mean, the Headingley game everyone was excited about, but you just can't take wickets on the 5th day. The Edgbaston game, it was only through England's complete unwillingness to understand what it is to draw a game. Any other team, India would have massively struggled to bowl out on that last day, as you saw in the 300-run partnership between Smith and Brook a couple of days before that. So that pitch was turgid and repulsive, really. And the Lord's pitch, I mean, it is. I can't stand it. And the Lord's pitch,
it's like the style of play has made those surfaces look better than they were, because results came, in spite of the wicket, not because of it.
Exactly, and they probably shouldn't have done. And the Lord's test, I mean, how India didn't chase down 193 on what we know to be a very placid wicket. We know Lords gets easier and easier. I mean, that was just incredible nerves, and that was kind of mirrored beautifully by the incredible nerves of England's batting in the last test, where Jamie Smith is, for my money, one of the most dazzling and marvellous batters I've had the privilege to watch. He wasn't Jamie Smith yesterday. His feet were like nailed to the floor, and his hand was shakingly wafting towards balls he could have left as Jeremy Coney kept screaming, "You're allowed to leave it, Jamie. You're allowed to leave it." So, I mean, we just saw. I thought that was part of the real fun of it. Actually, was that we talk a lot of psychobabble. I may have mentioned it in yesterday's pod about fear and confidence and whatnot. And I know there's some people out there who go, "Come off it! They're just cricketers. They just go out and see a ball and hit it." Well, on those two occasions at Lords when India was batting and at the Oval when England was batting, it was very clear that pressure is something and terror is something. And suddenly people who can smash balls to all parts are just reduced to jelly. And that's
like
fun,
carbon dioxide. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not a problem.
Correct.
I remember there was a fun period of time where Australia's Prime Minister was running the line, it's an odorless, colourless gas. I'm like, yes, many gases that can kill you are that. That is true. Now, I want to talk about Jamie Smith and Rishabh Pant a little. I want to, but maybe we just skip through what happened the course of this series in terms of trying to sum up goodness or otherwise. It's interesting to me. I don't know. There are a few different strands that I want to pull together. One thing is, I'm jumping all over the place here, but that's because I'm excited because I've been listening to you lot talking about it, and now I get to talk about it. There is a great frustration for me as a stats liking person that Rishabh Pant is reached 6th on the list of most runs by a wicketkeeper in a series, and then missed the last test. It was his for the taking. It was absolutely so there. Jamie Smith also made a shitload of runs in the series, and he's pretty high up on that list, but didn't make any. When it mattered on that last day. I don't want to seem unfair here, and I don't know whether Jamie Smith is broadly an intelligent person day to day, but it seemed to me that in this series, as a batting player, Jamie Smith did two of the stupidest things I've ever seen in cricket. I mean, the charging cover drive to nick off with 17 runs to go and thus open the door for England to lose the game and lose the series lead at the Oval was one thing, but I still have not been able to get over the Edgbaston bit. And I know we talked about this earlier in the series, and we talked about Sunil Gavaskar and the stupid bit when Rishabh tried to hit a 6 at the MCG unnecessarily while trying to save the game. That was stupid, but it was almost less stupid because at least he only tried to hit one. Jamie Smith had already hit one and then hit a second one and then hit a third one. And trying to hit the 4th 6 in a row, which, I mean, aside from, I think Kapil Dev did that to avoid the follow-on, but I don't know if anyone else has ever hit 4 in a row in Test cricket, have they? It's the only one that I can think of. So to think I'm going to do that with about 2 hours left, there might have been longer, there might have been extended overs, but there also might have been bad light or whatever it was. You've got a realistic chance of saving that test at Edgbaston. Like, probably India will win it. They needed 3 or 4 wickets at that point. They were probably going to win it. But if you're in, you've got someone you can bat with, you're a reasonable chance. I think he was batting with Bryden Cars of saving that test. And if you go, well, we're the team that doesn't do draws, great, but you were no chance of winning it. The winning target was so far away that the runs were irrelevant at that point. So hitting a 6 or not hitting a 6 doesn't matter. And in the whole thing of, well, it doesn't matter because we don't want to draw games, you're throwing away a win. Like, that's it's not just a thing that, oh, well, you win or you lose, and that's just the way we play. You've already won the previous test, but by losing the next one, you have unwon the previous test. You've
unwon the unwinnable test. Yeah.
Right.
I agree. And actually, in the unwinnable test, he did the third most stupid thing, which is up there with the most stupid things. Do you remember he hit a couple of 6s and then had tried to hit the last ball before the new ball was available for 6, probably got out, and exposed the tail to the new ball, which
right.
was also kind of amazing.
I'm thinking, Daniel, and I don't want to make this all about Ashes stuff, but if there are some flat tracks in Australia, Jamie Smith might win a series for England down under. He might. He's the kind of player who can monster bowling if it's not doing much.
Yeah, Gilchrist-ish.
And I've got an early eye on him to do something great down there. But if he continues to play like an absolute moron on these occasions when he needs to not do that, does that somewhat undermine the gifts that he is bringing to the game? I'm very conflicted about this.
I tend to think it sort of does. I mean, I feel the same about Harry Brook, and he was very unapologetic in the interview yesterday about the shot he played to get out, because he'd just whacked a couple of fours. And he was saying, well, I just realised that I could basically take 30 runs off the next 2 or 3 overs, and it was done. And I'm thinking, yeah, but it was already done.
Take 30 runs off the next 10 overs.
Or six. Yeah. I mean, there'll be a boundary ball and a single, and you've got Joe Root batting like a god at the other end. And, where is this impatience coming from? England have basically won the game. And so, those two
you don't have
do that.
to win it. I always come back to Dean Elgar saying there's no rule that says we have to win it in less than 5 days.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, look, there is an argument that the longer you hang around, the more the nerves get in and the more balls that can get you out. There's an argument to that too. It's all about balance, isn't it?
The more tired the bowlers get and the more frustrated the opposition gets. And
it goes that way round as well. Just as India found out at Old Trafford when they batted England into the dirt and forced wholesale changes for the final test. Yeah, there's loads of ways of doing it. Those two players particularly do that. The problem you've always got is the counterfactual, that if they don't play like that, are you going to get the 180 runs that Jamie Smith scored? Are you going to get that 100 that Brooks scored, better than a run a ball in a ridiculous chase that they should have got? So, I just think it means that they're flawed, like every plan is flawed, like they're flawed in that way. And it looks kind of dumb. But I think it's quite fun for people to lampoon. I mean, Aussies are going to love lampooning him if he gets out like that. So, and I think
they're not going to love it if he makes 180 at Perth, which is, I mean, if that pitch gets pretty flat sometimes through the middle, sometimes Brisbane, sometimes there's not much in the pink ball. It doesn't always do heaps, and batting can be good at the Gabba. Yeah, there are times when it might work for him.
I think the other thing we've got to give him a little bit of slack for is that he's a recent Test player. He only started a year ago, and he was never keeping wicket. I mean, he did it for Surrey about 7 or 8 times, and he's then kept wicket for longer than any wicket keeper has kept in England for 40 odd years, like 1960s. We've got to go back to the days of Ken Barrington and thoroughly tedious tracks and triple hundreds by Bob Cowper and Bob Simpson and things like that before you really get those kind of numbers. And he was the only keeper for all 5 tests, and his numbers drastically dropped off a cliff after the end of the 3rd test. He was in the field for a very long time at Old Trafford. They had 3 days off. He goes to the Oval in a basically must-win game because it wasn't going to be a draw. And you still got the same. You've got massive amounts of mental fatigue with a guy who's not used to keeping wicket for large periods of time, and he's keeping for the longest period of time. So I think that might affect your mental acuity. I think you'd need some Noobru. I think if you could get hold of some Noobru, that could make an enormous difference. It's certainly been working for Adam Collins. So if it works for Adam Collins, it sure as hell would work for Jamie Smith. But I think there was, though, Geoff, there was a little bit more of what Vaughan called baseball with brains. I mean, what I saw, for example, from Crawley and Duckett was they'd worked out how to negate Bumrah, and they were going to do it. So instead of doing a reverse ramp like Joe Root had done or Sam Constas or whatever, instead of taking the fight to Bumrah, because India was so rigid about how they were going to use him and saying, well, it's 5 over spells, it's 3 matches, they went, okay, well, we'll play the 5 overs. And this was like, oh, hang on a minute. This looks like intelligent cricket. Stop. Hold your horses. I can't work out what's going on here. So there were little elements of that, which were, I mean, more than little, actually. They were pretty good. I do think, though, that both sides got their selections wrong so often, which is probably what made it so much fun. That, you bring Archer back, then don't play him back-to-back. play him in the third and the fifth because the Oval's going to be spicy. You know that. So having
And
got
Bumrah the same.
and having got the lead at 2-1, you then go, okay, they've got to play Bumrah at Old Trafford because they need to win both games to win the series. So you can call their bluff and go, right, well, you pick your Bumrah, we'll keep Archer. That's the smarter thing because then you've got a card up your sleeve for playing in the last test. I thought India's selection was utterly confused on occasion. They didn't pick the fourth seamer at the Oval when it was the most obvious place to do it. That should have been Shardul Thakur for sure.
But if they pick the fourth seamer, does Washington play? And if Washington doesn't play, well, they probably don't win the test.
Well, Washington
his batting
does play.
was crucial.
Yeah, but Washington does play for me because, well, this is the thing. See, this is where India also messed up. They can't get their heads around the fact that because Ravindra Jadeja and Washington Sundar bowl, that they are in fact frontline batters. They're just unbelievably lucky to have two frontline batters who are bowlers as well. Washington should have batted at 3. He had the technique for 3. They didn't need to pick Sai Siddharthan. They kept on picking him and it didn't work. They didn't need to keep picking Karen Nair. That didn't work. In a series drenched with runs, those two barely got any.
Lamentably, one of the great sadnesses of my life that the Karen Nair story probably ends here, you think?
Well, it does mean, doesn't it, that David Lloyd has got his record back as a person with the highest test score not to have a score between 50 and 99. I think 214. Before that, Karen Nair had 300, didn't he? And but he then got a 50. He got a 50 in the Oval Test.
He got his second.
David
second
Bumble
50.
Lloyd has got his record back. But, they should have been picking, because they had more than enough good batting with Washington and Ravindra Jadeja in the top 7 alongside Dhruv Jurel and before that Rishabh Pant. At the Oval, they should definitely have had 4 seamers, and they nearly lost it because you saw how England was struggling with 3 seamers on that deck after Wokes went down. Let's be brutally frank about this. England were the better side at the Oval because they were playing with 10 men and they lost by 6 runs. But, they shouldn't have been because India should have picked Shardul Thakur and then they'd have had another seam option in the first innings. They wouldn't have had to flog their bowlers to absolute death. So they might have had a bit more during that Root-Brook partnership. It was a series, as so many are, that was littered with mistakes that are the ones that could be not made. Players make mistakes, batters get out, bowlers bowl filthy balls. But when you select the 11, have some logic. Look at this, and they didn't. I mean, imagine if they'd had 4 seamers plus Washington and Jadeja at the Oval. That's the perfect bowling lineup, and they can do that by just dropping one of Karen Nair or Sai Siddharthan, entirely up to them. And they picked Cambodge at Old Trafford. A mad
That
selection.
was weird. Yeah.
Nitish Kumar Reddy popped in and then popped out again. They didn't pick Prasid Krishna, even though when they picked Cambodge, for reasons that I cannot understand, they just dragged someone into the squad from outside. And I thought
There's always one of those, though. In almost any India tour that I can remember, there's some guy you've barely heard of who's just come off the plane and suddenly, and sometimes it works. Harshit Rana in Perth bowled really well. There are those, there is that depth, but the bench depth thing sometimes works. Sometimes it's Siraj at the MCG, sometimes it's Natarajan in Brisbane, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's Cambodge at Old Trafford when everyone's getting belted. Yeah, the extremely high number of runs could have made this pretty tedious. There's a funny quirk with players making big runs in a 2-all result in England. I'm thinking there's the Brian Lara one when he makes 700 plus and it's 2-all in, was that 95? There's Steve Smith in 2019, 700 plus runs, 2-all. There's the other Australian 2-all in 2023, although nobody was as prolific. And then there's Shubman Gill with his 700 plus into the top 20 all-time runs for a series. And bloody hell, he looked good. He just really stepped into that kind of I am, the princeling become the young king sort of. I'm like half Sourav Ganguly, half something else, and he looked pretty pleased with himself most of the time. Big smile a lot of the time, not just after they'd won, but there was a lot going on with the the evolution of Gill, who, we remember the flourish with which he entered in Australia those years ago. That carved back cut off Mitchell Starc for 6 at the Gabba is one that, I remember that shot so vividly, and that's when you're thinking, bloody hell, here's a player. But you get a lot of young Indian batting tyros who come through, look great for a minute and disappear, and he could have been one of those, but now he's very much not.
No, and interesting, I think it's because his technique slightly changed a bit. And I may have mentioned this on a daily before, but it's worth just noting. Alex Davidson, who's the photographer, is charged with photographing a lot of these guys. And he says that Shubman Gill's the most frustrating man to photograph because, yeah, he looks good, but not in a still image, because he addresses the ball right under his eyes with no follow-through. So Yashasvi Jaiswal, you get these lovely balletic movements in which his left arm, or his right arm rather, is sort of reaching for the skies. His body's in beautiful shapes. Whereas Shubman, you basically need to see where the ball is to understand the brilliance of the shot, because his bat is right next to his knee with no follow-through. It's just hit the middle of that bat and pinged away in a completely, false shotty way. What am I saying? It's the safest shot you can ever play. And he went through this phase during the series, I think at Edgbaston, when he basically had 4% false shots. And this includes little inside edges and whatnot, as well as plays and misses. He was supreme, but oddly dull in a way, because not dull, but just not photogenic, I guess is what I mean. Whereas you contrasted that with Rishabh Pant, and everybody made the joke, didn't they, that if anybody can bat on one leg, it's a man who frequently plays shots on his arse, or actually on no
with
legs
one
at
hand.
all. Yeah, with one hand, right. So you kind of got this sort of, you had these wonderful contrasts between those players, really, and how they were playing. It was, there was some beauty, there was some just brilliance, but there was a lot of Shubman Gill. And actually, he was under the spotlight right at the beginning, wasn't he? Because there was all this business about, what's a new captain can be like? Where his tactics are? Does he know what he's doing? And any time
and a new
anything
captain
went wrong,
with a middling record with the bat, personally, someone who hadn't yet done justice, etc., etc.
Well, no Kohli, no Rohit, no country's really happy when their legends depart. The English are still mithering about Jimmy Anderson. Where's he? But let alone a country of 1.4 billion idolaters of Virat Kohli. So it was always going to be difficult for him, and as a result, people kept on judging him by the result of one moment. He did utterly screw up yesterday at one point when he had a total brain fade and just allowed Gus Atkinson to take a single off a very full ball from Prasid Krishna off the last ball of the over, while El Cid was at the other end, literally being sort of wheeled back and forth.
This is peculiar. I've seen suggestions saying, how do we know he wasn't just being sporting and he didn't want them to bowl to Wokes because he thought that would be unfair?
Yeah, absolutely.
To which I think that seems untrue. I think if you show up to bat in Test cricket, you're saying that you're fit to bat.
Correct.
You can't.
Well, you're a wicket. You're a wicket to be taken. That's what you are.
Yes.
You're not. You're
one of the two
bystander.
that they need. Yeah. They need one or the other, right?
Yeah. None of that was happening. That was he just had a brain fade, and you're allowed to. Again, you're allowed to, because it's his first series and it was a long series. But it meant that he was scrutinised like never before.
Although I wonder about that though, because I was pondering that ending part. If he brings the field up there to cut off singles, then there's a greater risk that a boundary is scored, or that Atkinson might more likely try to hit the 6 that he needs to hit. This really fascinated me. I kept thinking about the 2019 World Cup final and Ben Stokes and the last ball of the regular innings when he gets that knee-high full toss from Trent Boult, and he was saying afterwards he could have hit that anywhere, but he'd already decided that he was going to run one and push for 2, because he knew that one would tie it. He knew one would take them to the super over, and if he could get the second, they'd get the win. He's coming back for the second run. There's a run out. Is it Rashid who gets run out at the end there?
Wood.
Rashid's already been run out, and Stokes kicks the bat away and all the rest of it, because it's a ball he could have smashed, but had already decided not to smash. Same thing with Atkinson. It wasn't quite as juicy, but it was still a full toss. It was swinging a little bit, but it was
a bit lower. It was a bit lower.
Yeah,
I think.
It might have been harder to pick up. But if Atkinson had been looking to hit a 6 off that ball, he could have tried to smash that straight. That could have been a straight drive 6, that last ball of the over, had that been what he was anticipating doing. And if he hits a 6, he ties the game. And in a way, that's almost the best result for Chris Wokes would have been. Atkinson hits a 6, Wokes takes strike for the next over, gets out, the game's tied, he gets to play in a tie, he gets remembered for the rest of his life, and he gets like the brave heroics thing that he faced the ball when he was out there injured. And they still win the series.
Except it wasn't the 6 that would have tied it, was it? Because they
it was 7 to win.
No, it was 8 to win because they lost by 6 runs.
Was it 8 to win?
They lost by 6 runs.
So that included the single.
Got that one run.
Damn. My plan was perfect.
It's a nice idea. It was a nice idea. But
one more over, he could have.
One more over. And I think that was the point, actually.
Well, Atkinson is trying to hit a 6 when he gets out, basically.
That's
so
right.
He's trying to do that. He just picked the wrong ball.
Yeah, once he's got to that point, he's tried to do it. But, there's a truth to that. But by the same token, you should not have 9 men on the boundary and tell your bowler to bowl a full ball, which he presumably didn't. So maybe the ball just slipped out of Prasad Krishna's hands. But what he should
have words afterwards. I think they were trying to get Krishna to bowl wide.
But he should have been bowling exactly a shortish wide ball or a bouncer. And since that was a very full ball on off stump, he has missed his length and his line by an enormous amount. So there was basically that was just all wrong. It was wrong cricket caused by, I think, what caused Jamie Smith not to be able to bat suddenly for about half an hour. It's the wonderful nature of the game. It's great fun. It's good. It's fun being like that.
We're going to come to a sort of Hall of Fame. I'm going to make an outrageous claim that might make some people angry after this. I'd also want to mention that my podcast is assembling a cricket team to play your podcast in a cricket team on the 18th of August on the Monday at Wormsley, which is the Lord's replica grounds, which is a very nice place to be. We're raising money for the Lord's Taverners who help disadvantaged kids across the UK and also do what they can to help overseas too, with programs that bring cricket into people's lives. It's a big part of what we do on the show. So we'd love you to come if you can attend, or if you want to send in a donation to the Lord's Tabs, look for the links in the show notes. You can come and watch from the hill for a pretty cheap entry, or you can get in the posh pavilion for a lot less than you would normally get in there for. Find the link in the show notes. Please do come on the 18th of August. It's the final word. This supposedly short wrap-up show has it's gone a little longer than expected. It's brought to you by Noobru, the Think Drink. The Advantage formula is what you guys have been putting away at the ground to keep your brains sharp and keep your minds in good fettle. You can win the Virat Kohli bat, an absolutely lovely bit of kit with the gloves and the leather bat case and all the rest of it. If you just pick up one of their products off the website, find the link in the show notes for that too. Daniel, here we are. It's the end of a series. I've been trying to sort of figure out how good it was, and I'm thinking you've got a test where a team win chasing 370, which is ridiculous. Second biggest chase England ever had. They should have had another one as well. They should have had their top 3 chasers would all have been against India in the last 3 years had they been able to nail the one at the Oval. That didn't happen. You've got the second test where England are taking it right up towards the end of the 5th day and get bowled out late on the 5th day playing for the draw. You've got Lords where India lose by 22 runs in the end, so they're a chance to win it. England are a chance to win it. You want, those games where either team could actually win rather than one playing for the draw all the time. You got the 4th test, which is a draw because India batted out, although had a wicket fallen, an hour earlier on that last day, then England would have been right in it. You might have had a situation where they needed to chase 60 from 5 overs.
Or Jadeja been caught first ball at slip rather than dropped, and suddenly they're 5 down before lunch, just before lunch with 2 sessions to go. Very different, especially with a guy with a broken foot.
You could have had a big margin India defeat there, but had something happened late in the day, you could have had a really, really close one. So it was, given how few runs India's tail made, that was, the Washington Jadeja partnership was pretty close to the last partnership. And then you've got the absolute squeaker at the Oval. I mean, those are 5. They're not all close, but 4 of them are close, and one of them is an absurd feat to chase 373 5 down. It's a pretty solid rack of 5 test matches.
It is. I mean, it really is. It sort of reminds me a bit of 2023 Ashes because rather loved those games as well. You know, they had a lot of closeness to them. And I don't know what it is about the moment, what's happening in cricket. I think both teams have really contributed to that. I think the 5-test nature of it, things can go wrong with 5-test series. When England go to Australia, it always goes wrong and everyone's bored witless by the end of the third because the series is over. But as long as within the first 3 games both sides win a game, then somehow it just gets really, really thrilling, doesn't it? And with 3-test series, unfortunate thing is they tend to be between sides that are a bit mismatched these days. So, look, it's a problem with the whole way cricket is arranged. We've talked about it many, many times and on this podcast. But, you know, England will play, like last year, they played the West Indies in Sri Lanka. Hopeless mismatch. They've won the series 2-0 before we get anywhere near a decider. But when they play against, the big 3 play against each other, you get some great series. And when England played against South Africa in the past, when they had 5-test series, those would also be good. The problem with them is that you can only really have one tourist when you have a 5-test series. And so you then rack up not playing against teams for years and years and years, like Pakistan will eventually come to England next year alongside New Zealand. I don't know when Sri Lanka will be back. I don't know when South Africa will be back, things like that. So it unbalances the fixture schedule, and a lot of people would just like things to be 3-match series, but I don't think there's really any format better than the 5-match thriller.
It was, that structure of, like, there's limited opportunity for other sides, right? So you have sides that are seen as weaker, they're playing in shorter series, but the shorter series means they don't have the opportunity to play out an epic, so they don't have the opportunity to convince people that they might be capable of doing that. So the run of results, I was just pondering this because, you know, Adam was referencing 2005 at various times, and this is the bit that might make people really mad, but we'll see. We'll find out. I might be marched off the internet. In terms of closeness of results, that's the series we just had is a better run of results, I think. My controversial opinion, my subway take, is that the 2005 Ashes was very good. It was a great series, but it's also an overrated series in terms of the results. You've got all-time players, you've got Shane Warne's finest hour, all that sort of stuff. But in terms of results, you've got one really great result, which is Edgbaston, which is, you know, a genuine proper in terms of the closeness of the result. You've got one brilliant draw where, you know, Old Trafford, where a team is trying to win, a team is trying to draw, it's 9 wickets down. You can't ask for any more from a close draw result, but that's not a close result where either team could win. And then, you know, Trent Bridge gets elevated by the other two because it wasn't as close as it looked. I think it's 7 wickets down in the end, I think.
Yeah, they won by 3 wickets, but it was quite a skinny chase, and it was really just fear that was going on there. You were watching fear.
And a couple of those wickets fall late in the piece. Like I think it's Hoggard and Giles at the end, but they get most of the way there. And so there's a chance, there's a nervy half hour or so, but it's not like, you know, had they been chasing 180, it might have been a bona fide thriller, whereas I don't think it is. I think it just looks good because it's keeping the company of, you know, it's like if you go out with 2 hot friends, they might make you look better just by comparison. And then in that context, you know, result-wise, Lords wasn't a great. Lords is pretty meh. You know, one team gets absolutely smashed by the other, and then the Oval is, you know, the game could go either way early on day 5, but it very quickly can't, and it's very quickly a non-event, and there's a lot of rain and there's a lot of wasted time. So I reckon, you know, and if you go into the 5th test and you don't have a situation where both teams can win it, I don't think that's a genuine thriller. You know, you had the situation in 05 where Australia could win that game and draw the series and retain, but it wouldn't have been the same as trying to win it in the last one. So, you know, I think it's a little less. I think it's had a lot of polish applied to it over the years. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. The 2 London tests were the least interesting ones, whereas here in this series, the 2 London tests were actually great games. They were brilliant games. One on a superb pitch and one on a pudding. Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I mean, look, it was 2-1 going into the last game, so India couldn't win the series either. It would have been better if it was 2-2. I don't know if we're ever going to get that. Has it happened in this country?
6 times.
2-2 going into the last test.
I don't know I don't know in England, 6 times overall. I'm doing this from memory here.
36-7 it happened, of course, in Australia.
Yep, 18, 95, 96. You've got the West Indies-India series in the 70s. You've got India-Australia in the 70s, and there are 2 more that I can't recall off the top of my head.
Doesn't happen at the Oval very often. So you take your deciders where you can find them, and frankly, 2-1 going into the last game is a decider of sorts, as it was. When Australia lost that game after the controversial ball change, they were bloody furious because although the Ashes are still retained, you want to win the series, and Australia haven't won a series in England since 2001. So, a draw will feel great for India as well. They haven't been beaten. I mean, again, they haven't beaten England in England for a very long time, but that's because these 3 just keep on slugging it out in England and having epic 2-all draws. And long may that continue. I'm kind of happy with that because I said right at the beginning, didn't I? To me, it was like the first time in these series when the result felt right. Do you know? Because it would have been weird if either side had won that series. Because they were kind of perfectly smashing into each other and leaving fragments of body parts everywhere.
And I think India were better broadly, except in the crunch. There are 2 games there they should have won. The two they lost, they should have won, really, and they didn't. And that has to be put partly down to them not coping with the situation. You can't be setting a team 370 and losing, which they did once, but almost did twice. and you also can't be not chasing 190 in one of the most run-filled series of all time. But were there any bits, as you look back, moments that you particularly enjoyed above all others?
Yeah, I mean, it'll sound slightly flippant, but I'm pleased to say that Matt Roller seems to have agreed with me because it was his moment of the series, was Zach Crawley faffing about for 9 minutes by arriving a minute and a half late, apparently. I mean, strictly speaking, if you're supposed to be out there at a certain time, you've got 2 minutes, haven't you, to faff about before you're timed out. So they managed to use up a minute and a half of that. I think the most hilarious bit was when the physio was called for. Well, I'm not even sure if the ball did touch his glove, but it might have been close enough. And Shubman Gill just losing his rag. I love that.
Fair enough.
Totally fair enough. Totally fair enough. It lit the blue touch paper. And it was, mirrored a little bit by Stokes losing his rag in the handshake gate. The annoying thing about handshake gate to me was that what could have elevated the series to the absolute apex would have been if Stokes had done what I wanted him to do, and which I prefigured or imagined when I said it on commentary, actually, that with an hour to go, I said, you all think that they're going to shake hands, but if these 2 are still in, they won't have got to their hundreds and they'll want them. And then, obviously, everyone was calling, "Oh, that can't possibly happen. No one would do that. That would be so ridiculous." I mean, why not?
Why not?
Then, I don't know why not. I don't know.
Why not?
Like cricketers.
Cricketers
are weird. Cricketers are just weird. It's like the run.
Literally, like players get dropped or chastised or criticised on the basis of hasn't made 100 in X number of years, whatever it is. If you have the chance to get one, you get one.
But the solution was the one that wasn't taken, and it annoyed me because obviously what's happening is you don't want to fall for this. You don't want to be suckered into bowling your bowlers anymore because you don't want to be out there anymore, and you don't have to. So what he should have done was say, okay, we're playing on. That's really good. Sent all of his fast bowlers off immediately to go and have a bath. Send out 3 subs. Bowl Harry Brook by all means, but put everybody on the boundary. I think Jadeja was on strike first. Allow him to run 11 runs to get to his 100 off the first ball. Just don't move towards the ball. Just let him hit it into the offside and stay there and let him run. And then he gets to 100 and then Washington comes on strike and then let him run his 20. And that would be great fun. We'd have watched 2 men run up and down 31 times in the space of 2 balls. And then he could have shaken his hand and said, "Well done, congratulations," and walked off. And that would have been, by far and away, a more brilliant way of exposing the farce than getting all hot under the collar.
Is there any rule that says you have to have 11 fielders?
There is also not that. No, there is that rule is also not there. You could just send everybody off.
Can you just voluntarily just go off? Just have the bowler?
I think so. I mean, he could have done that. But it's more fun watching them run, though, Geoff. Because the problem was they were hitting sixes. So if what India were doing was twofold. Yeah, but the fielders wouldn't have to run. That's my point.
Right.
So what England was suckered into there was getting angry and then bowling some balls, right? And granted, it was Root and it was Brook, but Root
Sure.
didn't get the memo and refused to allow his figures to get marmalised. So he was bowling properly. So actually, you could have put Root on, and then he would have nudged it into the offside, and then just watch what they run. And what you then do is you turn the tables, because the people who are getting knackered are now Jadeja and Washington Sundar, because they've now got to run 640 yards or whatever it is over the course of however long it's going to take them, while you just sit there with your arms folded,
like this.
going,
Yeah.
oh, having a little drink on the sideline.
Right. So they smack it out to deep mid-wicket. The fielder out there takes it and then just underarms it into a gap and then just leaves it there and just
kicks
watches
it
them.
onto the floor and just watches them run.
Well, it has to. Yeah, you got to throw it far enough away that they don't think they're getting suckered into a run.
Well, also,
out,
if everybody's out on the boundary, then they might just take the single. They think they're taking the single, so they might just push it into no man's land, and nobody moves. Bowler, fielders, no one.
I love this.
That's how you do it.
And if you're being snide and wanting to say that this is a cheap milestone that doesn't mean anything, no greater way to do it than that.
Don't you think?
But yeah. But, the match is the match, and you're allowed to make tons.
Exactly. So, but you're also allowed to give tons. That's the thing. You're allowed to do both.
Conversely, in the old style where, Keith Miller would make 100 and then whack one up in the air because he thought it'd be greedy to carry on. Like I've said, I wanted to see Jadeja and Washington say, we will take the next 10.4 overs, thank you. Like, we're not going off now. Like, why not make 160? Why not take them down at that point? When else do you have complete license, unless you're Jamie Smith at literally any time in a test match, when else do you have complete license to do whatever the fuck you want batting wise and just go for everything? It would have been fun. And if they got bowled out, then England would have had to come and face 3 overs, and they would have said, no, you're facing the 3 overs. Like, sure, they're going to be bowled by Karan Nair, and but like, I don't know, it would have been entertaining.
They could have done that. But similarly, England could counter it by just taking all their players off and bringing out subs and just have 2 people who are in the team to bowl, and they would be shitty bowlers. I mean, Duckett and Brook.
Fine. That's fine. Make a double 100.
So you can go this, but you can go back and forth playing silly games with each other, and it could be fun. And I think that was my biggest regret. That was my biggest regret, that they didn't just take that to the nth degree. But otherwise, I mean, in terms of Hall of Fame, geez, I mean, Chris Woakes walking out the bat, Rishabh Pant walking out to bat, if you can call it walking. Shoaib Bashir trying to field on the boundary while keeping his hand away from the ball and then getting the winning wicket. You think about Colin Cowdrey, and this has been litigated many times. It wasn't brave. If he hadn't done it, he should have been actually put in front of a court-martial because all he had to do was sit down at the non-striker's end for 2 balls. These guys, in a series, 3 of them came out to do things that they really, really didn't want to do. I mean, Shoaib Bashir's hand was bust. He did not want to bat. And it was hard to bowl. It was hard to field.
I wanted to see Woakes face a ball. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I
wanted to. I desperately wanted to. Yeah.
I wanted to see how he was going to do it. Was he going to bat left-handed?
Yeah.
Was that the idea?
He was going to bat left-handed. He's the top hand. And as Stuart Broad said to me before play, he said, and if he does, he'll ping one through the covers for 4, and it'll be the most Chris Woakes thing you've ever seen in your life, because he is renowned for being basically the most talented hand-eye coordinated sportsman in that team. He does darts and badminton, squash and golf and fuck knows what else.
Yeah. Well, I wish for his sake that he'd lost middle stump with the scores tied, because imagine if you'd played in the tie and you'd done that, you'd be celebrated forever. But as it is, Atkinson decided to try to slog sweep a curling in-swinging Yorker over deep mid-wicket, which was possibly not the right call. Well, I think we've talked about what we need to talk about. We've talked about Mohammad Siraj enough in the previous couple of days, and there will always be something else to talk about. But this has been the final word. Daniel Norcross, thank you for all of your work through the series. Thanks to all of our other co-hosts who've stepped in when it's been required. Ben Jones, Cameron Ponsonby, among others. And thanks to all of you for listening in or watching it if you've been following along on the videos. Thanks to our team for getting behind it, and Noobru for supporting the show. Please do come down on the 18th of August if you can. If you're in the UK, come along to Wormsley. It's going to be a very fun day. And if you want to get involved with what we're doing online, patreon.com/thefinalword. That's where our online community is based. That's it. It's been the Final Word Daily. England, India, it is done. We will see you for the next thing.
Yoo-hoo. Bye.